Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm Morgan Hafner with Becker's Hospital Review. We will begin today's webinar with a presentation, and we'll have time at the end of the hour for our question and answer session. You can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar by typing them into your control panel in the space labeled Enter a Question for Staff and clicking Send. We are looking forward to hearing your questions. Additionally, in about a week following the webinar, we will be sending you a copy of the presentation to the email you used to register. At this time, it is now my pleasure to start today's webinar by introducing our presenters. Brian Q. Davis is Senior Vice President of Scorpion Healthcare. As Senior Vice President, Brian leads Scorpion Healthcare's vision of bringing a new level of competitive advantage to healthcare providers online. His responsibilities include go-to-market strategy and business development for Scorpion Healthcare. He has been a speaker and panelist at various healthcare industry conferences and has been quoted in Becker's Hospital Review. He has been a panelist at the Becker's CIO and Health IT Summit and Healthcare Internet Conference. He is also a member of the Society for Healthcare Strategy and Market Development Digital Task Force. Brian, I'll now turn the floor over to you to begin today's webinar.
Thank you, Morgan. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with our friends at Becker's, and appreciate you putting together this opportunity. In terms of the objectives of today's presentation and the agenda, some of the things that we wanted to talk about in terms of and where the genesis of today's presentation came from was really from a conversation that I had with a CEO friend of mine, a hospital CEO. And he asked me some questions about what are the things that he needs to understand as a CEO in 2017 about digital strategy for his hospital and healthcare system. And out of that lunch meeting came some of these things, and that's what we're going to share today. And it starts with understanding in 2017, where is the attention of our patients and consumers, and where is it not? How important first impressions are, and then finally get into where to invest. He asked that question: if I was going to look at where should I place some strategic investments, and how should I do that? Where are some opportunities, and where's some low-hanging fruit? And then we'll take some Q&A. But what I'd like anybody on the call to be able to take away from today's call is hopefully come away with a way to understand how to attract more patients, how to move towards execution of strategy that maybe is a bit different than you've seen in the past, and understand where there's opportunity to make investments, where there's opportunity to get some quick wins in 2017. But first, just to give you a quick 30 seconds about Scorpion Healthcare and our organization. Scorpion Healthcare as an organization has been in business about 17 years. We've got offices in Valencia, California, and Dallas, Texas. And we work in three primary verticals: the legal industry, national brands, and then specifically Scorpion Healthcare in the healthcare world. Within our healthcare vertical, our business is really primarily focused on the business of hospitals. And it is honestly hospitals of all shapes and sizes, from tiny little critical access hospitals to a large swath of independent hospital systems and regional players, as well as some of the national IDNs. But our model has allowed us to be very scalable in terms of who we work with and who we service. But we're really focused on that business around hospitals and their ancillary services. In terms of a little bit more detail on our company, we did about $135 million last year, Inc. 5000 company for the last several years, and then just over 425 employees, which makes us, quite possibly the largest player in this market, with specific focus on the realm of digital marketing and strategy for hospitals and healthcare systems. But one thing that we've seen over the last 36 months is a tremendous growth in our organization. We've grown actually over 700% in the last 36 months. And we've experienced this growth and obviously enjoyed helping more and more hospitals target their objectives when it comes to their digital strategy over the last 3 years. But we started to ask why. Why is this? And to put it in a nutshell, C-level executives all over the country are finally realizing that their web presence is of strategic importance, and that the status quo no longer works. Different approaches are going to be required for different outcomes. And as the nature of the market changes, and as margins become slimmer and new opportunities open up, it's going to require a different mindset and a different set of thinking when it comes to how we attract consumers and patients to our facilities, our doctors, our system over other like alternatives in their marketplace. And this is really where the question starts many times with our conversations with the C-suite is, what are we going to do to get folks to come to us? And this could be patients, this could be medical professionals, this can be any number of things, but how do we get them to choose our brand over other like alternatives in the marketplace? In many cases, this starts, and the most direct path in 2017 is that those patients that we want are on the internet. And whether we like it or not, and whether our providers like it or not, Dr. Google is out there. And consumer behavior has changed such, even over the last 4 or 5 years, that there's huge opportunity to take advantage of the attention and the interaction that happens online with search engines. And we've even seen as more and more health-related search inquiries have been taking place on Google and Bing and other search engines like that, even the results and the way those organizations are presenting health information has changed. And if any of you have recognized this, even if you search symptom information online, you'll actually see that Google is surfacing information, curated information, right there in the search results, with the idea of, hey, we can provide you quick information, valid sourced information without you ever having to leave the search engine. And this is a reaction to the overwhelming amount of health-related inquiries that these organizations are seeing. But the truth is that in 2017, consumers buy brands and they buy experience. And to the extent that your healthcare system, hospital, or your physicians even are part of your brand, they're looking at these things differently now. It's no longer good enough to just be there. You have to be able to differentiate yourself. And this article, I think, pointed out pretty well in the way we have changed how we buy things. 90% of all new American mothers are millennials, and they buy things differently. And the truth is, we all buy things differently. And we're interested in what is fast, instant, and reliable, and it better be on our phone, and it better not be confusing, and it better deliver what we're looking for when we're looking for it every time. And if you don't do that online, that consumer, that patient will be gone, and they won't come back. And the data shows that. But ultimately, where the patient focuses their attention and their perception is reality. And this is, I just use this story because I think this kind of brings this home. We had a client a couple of years ago that was running maternity tours. And they noticed that about 15 to 20% of the women that came on the maternity tour did not come back to have their baby at the hospital. And someone noticed this and said, well, why is this? We have the best clinical outcomes, the best doctors, the best technology. We should not be losing these opportunities to create new relationships with families. And so they went and surveyed the women that had clearly had their baby somewhere else by that point in time. And they asked them, why didn't you come back to our hospital after the tour? We have the best clinical outcomes, the best doctors, best technology. And the number one answer, by an order of magnitude on the survey of why women didn't come back, was that you had box TVs in the hospital rooms. And as you might expect, that left many of the much of the leadership incensed a little bit to say, hey, well, wait a minute. You're coming here to have your baby, not watch TV. What difference does that make? And the answer to that, the counter answer to that from the surveys was, I can't tell how good you are by looking. I can only connect with the things that are familiar to me. And my husband's television is more up to date than yours. The second part of that was, if I can't trust you to do the little things right, then how can I trust you to do the big things right? And that was the gut punch that netted the local Best Buy an order of about 300 flat screen TVs in the next 24 hours. The CEO, once he got a hold of that, replaced all the TVs within just the next couple of days. But the point is it is the little things that make a difference. And frankly, digital strategy and delivering a high quality digital experience is a little thing in relative terms to the complexity of and the services and the things that healthcare providers do for their patients every day. But where is the attention in 2017? And it's important to actually put some context around where we are and how things have changed, even in the last few years. But it's important to understand that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 300 years from now, history will look back and look at the last 20 years as a shift that is as large as the introduction of the Gutenberg press. There's a massive cultural shift in not only in terms of how we communicate with each other, but also where our attention is. And it is truly historic times. And again, all the attention is aggressively moving online. And this kind of seems like it should be common sense, but in many cases, our actions, and certainly the actions inside of the healthcare world, do not necessarily correlate with this current reality. And so that's why it's important to understand that if you know where the attention is, we need to have strategies around how best to not only be in front of those people where they're looking, but also make sure that we're developing and engineering an experience that understands what they need and then seeks to reduce their uncertainty throughout that process. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But the attention is less and less where it used to be. TV, print, billboards, the billboards we all love in healthcare, the attention is less and less there. But for some reason, we continue to over-index and over-invest in those areas. And this, could be attributed to a number of reasons. But humans are creatures of habit. And when we do things for many, many years, sometimes it's hard to change. And there's a number of reasons why that may be true. But it's important to understand what isn't working. And I've got to share a couple of examples here that are in my local community here that I see all the time. But this is the kind of thing that we all know happens everywhere. For example, this is the kind of thing that isn't working anymore. But we spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in limited resources doing this. This is a advertisement that is on the exit ramp from an airport. As you're leaving the airport, and on the right-hand side is a 500-word script font paragraph about transplants. Again, you could say, well, this is branding, and this is, hopefully somebody stops on the stairs on the way out of the airport. But the truth is it is a waste of money. And as we get into times where margins are tighter and resources are more scarce, this is the kind of thing that you can't afford to continue to do. You've got to look to where you can get more leverage out of your investments. Another example that I saw recently at a hospital that I still am wondering what it is here in Dallas. I'm not sure what this advertisement means, but again, this is a high premium billboard in Dallas that is tens of thousands of dollars, but I'm not sure. I don't know really what it means. And as I've polled different people as we've gone through this presentation, it still is a mystery. But this is the kind of thing, again, that happens all the time without much accountability. And there's huge amounts of opportunity to get better leverage out of the investments that are made from a marketing perspective with health systems. Because the attention is here. It's online. And you either must put yourself in a position to master it, or you'll be mastered by it, or your competitors who are moving faster. In terms of some statistics that you can take home, the data is there, and I mean, again, this is only increasing every year. On average, Americans spend over 40 hours a week consuming digital media. 20% of that time, or 1 out of every 5 minutes, is spent on social networking, social networks, and 80% of all Americans use Facebook on a regular basis. So again, in terms of opportunity, in terms of targeting, in terms of being able to very specifically deliver the types of messages you want, the right time, right place, right context, there's huge opportunity to do that. And you have much less opportunity in some of the more traditional forms. And our friends over at Google had a good quote here. Brian Cusack, who's head of industry healthcare at Google, I thought this encapsulated pretty well. He said, if you don't have a digital strategy already in place for your health system, you're already behind. This is not a problem you can hope to solve in 24 months. Consumer behavior and the nature of the internet change too fast. You must be nimble. And the only problem with this quote is that this happened in 2015. So things are moving at an exponential pace in terms of how fast things are changing. And again, that is going to require a different mindset in terms of how healthcare systems and how hospitals specifically react to that new reality. And it's going to require a different mindset. And we'll talk about that right now. It starts with first impressions, though, and I just wanted to share a story, a personal story that's happened to me recently that really brought this home for me. Because in terms of the business that Scorpion does with our clients, it is never lost on us that in healthcare marketing, there's always the difference between healthcare marketing and other forms of marketing is that there is a person on the other end of that experience that is very likely at a very high level of uncertainty, either for themselves or their family. And honestly, it's one of the things that gets us up every day, is that we know that if we do our job really well and we help our clients do their jobs really well, and we help someone find the resources they need just a little bit faster, get connected with the right doctor or the right service, that it can be the difference potentially in their outcome. So that's why all of these things have to be, there has to be a significant amount of focus and intent around everything we do, and understanding that there is a person or there's people on the other end of that equation. And again, first impressions, well, they happen everywhere. And certainly hospitals and healthcare systems are fantastic at delivering that great first impression when you come into their rooms or their lobbies, beautiful facilities. And that is all about establishing that first impression. But many times online, that doesn't always happen. But let me share with you a story that, again, is near and dear to my heart. And it starts with my little one, Perry Elizabeth, who was born on February 19th, 2017. And until her mom allows me to start taking her to work, I told her I was going to include her in my presentation, so here she is. But it actually did start, her whole existence started with a moment of very high uncertainty for for myself and her mother. She was born, and immediately upon her birth, something was wrong with her feet. And I could tell this. Her mother couldn't see it. And obviously she seemed healthy, but there was something out of place. I'm literally in the delivery room, and I pick up my phone because the physician says, "Oh, it's no problem. She has bilateral club feet." And I'm literally in I've never heard of this. I didn't know what it was. I'm literally in the delivery room holding my wife's hand. And while she can't see the situation, I am over here Googling on my phone what this is. And again, you couldn't maximize my uncertainty at that moment. I didn't know what the implications of that was. I didn't know what it was maybe a sign of or anything. But the first place I went was the internet, on my phone, right there in the delivery room. And I was greeted with information from Google, but also from our local provider, Scottish Rite, who is here in Dallas. And there's my little girl, Perry, who is undergoing her clubfoot treatment. But Scottish Rite did an amazing job. They put an ad right in front of me. And as I searched for that, I found them, and I found a webpage that had information. It wasn't much, but it was enough for me to be able to see children that had the condition before and children after the condition. I literally took this in about 5 seconds, and I was off. It was enough for me to understand that this is something that was treatable, and it was nothing that was life-threatening or was going to deliver any type of significant challenge. But I took that in 5 to 10 seconds right there in the delivery room, just to get an idea, and credit to the amazing people at Scottish Rite. If anybody here is familiar with this hospital, they're incredible people. So I've got to speak to them. And Perry has been doing great, and her little feet are coming along wonderful. But the story here is that a better patient experience, in my perspective, and in many times our clients, is that a better patient experience starts with a better online experience. Because it is in those first few seconds what we get and what our interaction is with a given brand that can determine our impression of what that brand can deliver. And this is something we see every day in the apps and the experiences we have with brands that we trust, Amazon and Facebook and Uber and LinkedIn, they always deliver on their brand promise online. We can always count on them to work. They're always up. They always have a thoughtful experience that's been created to make it easy for us to interact with them. And they always deliver. And when we experience anything less than that with our healthcare providers, there can be a gap in trust. And that's why that first impression, those first few experiences, both in terms of how easy those services are to find, as well as what we find in those first few seconds, can be the difference between what our first impression is with that organization and whether we judge them, rightly or wrongly, to be a high quality organization. Bottom line is, boring and vanilla templates don't work anymore. First impression online matters. And with many of our clients, that's what a lot of the conversation starts with. It's about delivering beautiful, interactive web experiences that are differentiated, that highlight your competitive differentiators, your technology, but also establish a level of confidence in that they have thought about the things that you will need before you have arrived. And certainly that is what we want to create in those moments of heightened uncertainty for parents, for patients, for their families. So again, if I kind of zoom back to my conversation with my CEO buddy, he said, again, where should I invest? Where are there opportunities? Where should I strategically think about investing for our organization, and where is there some low-hanging fruit? And so I kind of put together a checklist for it, and that's what we'll share here. Number one, place to avoid. I said, you need to avoid massive enterprise website platforms and built-in houses approaches. I think most people could agree that hospitals and healthcare systems are not good at being in the business of web development or digital strategy long-term. They can develop approaches that may exist in a short period of time, but it's consistent that those teams rarely stay in place over a long period of time, and it creates opportunities to become out of date and out of sync with the operational strategic objectives of the organization. There's some things you should build, there's other things you shouldn't. And our most successful clients have locked into this idea. It's more about the strategy and less about the construction. The hidden cost of a build it ourselves approach, opportunity cost of slow rollout and execution. Consistently, we've seen across the industry, it takes years to roll these things out, and it just can't anymore. Things move too fast. If your project plan is 24 months, by the time you roll it out, everything's changed. The other part is retaining in-house web development and the high IT overhead that comes with that. IT organizations have enough things on their hands these days with EHRs and Epic and Cerner or whatever they might be rolling out at that given time. And the last place they have bandwidth typically is to support the web development and the external marketing needs of the marketing department. And marketing teams are then limited in their ability to execute strategy, typically due to a lack of bandwidth, technology access, or even the talent necessary. And then finally, you're out of date in 24 to 36 months. Best practice says that your web presence and web experience should be updated every 24 to 36 months, just because not only does the internet change that quickly, but consumer behavior changes that quickly. And if you can't keep up with that pace, you're going to be out of date. And this is the reason many hospital and healthcare organizations become out of date over time, in a short amount of time. A different approach, though, invest in flexible platforms and fully managed services. Rather than try to build your own car, just lease it. Just get the service, get the outcome, buy the outcome instead of trying to build your own car. Advantages there, high speed rollout and execution, doing things in months, not years. Lowering your total cost of ownership so you have more money to invest in places that are more strategic. Always having access to the best talent, professional drivers, if you will. Giving the marketing teams the opportunity to focus on strategy with confidence and execution. I heard one of my VP of marketing friend said that with this approach, it's enabled her to look at her market without fear of execution risk, knowing that she can look at her market and look at the needs of her organization, look at the nature of her competitors, and look at the operational requirements of the organization, and know that she can execute on her strategy without fear of access to bandwidth or lack of bandwidth, access to talent or technology. And she said, in that conversation, she said, I also happen to know for a fact my competitors don't have the ability to move at that speed. And then finally, future-proof platforms that are always in sync with consumer behavior. If you're always having to try to hope that you can get the budget for a new website or web experience in years to come, there's a good chance that an MRI machine or a new cancer wing will take precedence over that, and that's the reason in 5 years you're out of date. But a different approach gives you a better solution there. Another place to avoid is to recognize that companies and providers that are incentivized to support the status quo are no longer going to get you where you want to go. It's truth that in many cases, the agencies that have worked with hospital and healthcare organizations for many, many years have not necessarily evolved at the rate that they've needed to deliver specifically in the world of digital strategy. They're great at placing media buys, they're great at placing TV, billboards, and everything else, but they're also incentivized because their business model is of such that they're incentivized to keep things as they are. And it's really easy to continue that, but it isn't necessarily going to provide the results or allow you to get the leverage that exists in the digital world. Rather, invest in new approaches and skill sets that'll help you actually market in the year that we're in. And those skill sets are going to be distinctly different than the skill sets that have existed in previous years. You need to invest in people that understand, in organizations and companies that can help bring access and knowledge of the latest things that are happening to be able to take advantage of them. And those that are fastest will win, and those that have the right people on their team will capture these types of opportunities. But it's going to require an investment in different areas than have been there in the past. Also, I told him, I said, you need to make sure your marketing team is avoiding flurry of activity marketing. And certainly this is something we've seen in everybody's experience where there's marketing is treated as something we have to do a lot of things to show that we're doing things, as opposed to really looking at how we can be accountable with the dollars that are being invested. And this is really a conversation about elevating the presence and elevating the stature of the marketing department inside of hospitals, because it's absolutely true that healthcare marketing has never been more strategic to the organization than it is today. It can be the thing that gets people to choose one brand or another. And I don't believe that in the history of healthcare marketing that's ever been more true than it is today. But it also requires a different mindset in terms of how we think about marketing. It's no good just to put the physician's photo on the billboard and hope that works. It's more important to look at the operational requirements of the organization, be able to actually interview service line leaders, or actually have conversations with the CFO about where do we need more volume, where can marketing drive incremental volume in a strategic way, and then look at the operational requirements to be able to execute on that. Because the other component is not just being able to drive volume, but then the ability to execute a great customer experience all the way through. And I'm sure we've all seen scenarios where someone said, hey, we really need to market this. But then the question was asked, well, when do we have capacity, or when does that doctor have capacity to take on new patients? And the answer is, well, 4 months. Well, then probably not a good idea to market them yet. But those are the kinds of questions, both in terms of how do we align marketing activities strategically with organizations, and then also operationally before we invest in advertising or other activities to drive volume. And then once we do that, be able to account for it and report on it. and be able to actually show the organization of the impact that marketing is having. Because the truth is, marketing departments at hospitals everywhere are delivering value, but just most of the time they're just not getting credit. And there's no reason for that in 2017. The opportunity, the technology, and the capabilities are there. And then finally, I told him, again, this is my CEO friend, I said, you've got to avoid a head in the sand approach. You can't just stick your head in the sand and hope that this goes away. You actually need to invest some of your own time. As a senior executive, you need to pick up your phone and look at the different pathways that you might experience as a patient of your hospital online, if you didn't know anybody there. And spend a few minutes and look at that experience and see if it's satisfactory. See if it delivers a pathway that helps you feel more confident about engaging that organization. And that the journey is high quality and that you do have good first impressions. So then in terms of specific opportunities and low-hanging fruit, I said, there are a couple of things out there, some trends, some more tactical things that I told him that you should look into. And there's opportunity to quickly capture a better experience online and be more strategic. And again, one is investing in more managed services, but the other part is, again, on the tactical level, is to look at extracting the hidden value of your physician network by owning their online presence. Again, we obviously grow revenue by acquiring or partnering with more and more physician organizations, but those physicians not only bring patients with them, but they bring an online presence that has value, that is typically not fully leveraged by hospitals and healthcare systems, but there's opportunity there. Because when people look for a doctor, or when you look for anything, honestly, this may or may not be common knowledge, but 55% of the traffic in a given search shows up, or it goes to the first three listings in the search results. So owning and dominating those first three listings for your physician profiles, or at least the top two, is an opportunity to recapture traffic that is going to other places. And the truth is that there are large third-party aggregators, folks like HealthGrades and other organizations, US News and so on and so forth, that have entire business models around providing physician information that they then monetize. But there's opportunity to bring this traffic back to your hospital and healthcare systems where it should go. It delivers a better experience to your patients, and probably remove some of the other things that can be distractions in terms of advertising and other things where that physician's presence on the web is being monetized by third parties. So there's no reason that you as a healthcare system or hospital should not own that online presence. And there's some ways to do that. Number one, 3 tactics. Integration of your HCAP scores. And we've seen more and more of a trend around this. Not only is it good in terms of transparency and starting to look toward providing more and more transparent data to consumers and helping them make a decision about which doctors are actually the best. But also it has value in terms of giving more and more authority to your website and your physician web profiles. Google sees those star ratings as data, and it says, hey, all things being equal, if this physician profile has star rating data, then I'm going to consider it more authoritative than it without it. And all things being equal, Google would also rather give more and more traffic to a hospital site, because it knows you're a hospital or healthcare system, over third-party platforms which may or may not be providing accurate data. The second part is having optimized profiles that are built around the way that they're indexed, but also provide high-quality information that helps patients make better decisions. And then finally, using pay-per-click marketing at scale. So an easy way to recapture all that traffic is to simply run pay-per-click advertising for all of your physicians' names. And many times that's kind of a hard thing to do because it requires kind of a lot of overhead to build that out. But it's an easy and relatively inexpensive way to recapture traffic. That's tactic number one. Recapture more and more traffic from your physicians. Tactic number 2, listings and locations and listings. Be easy to find online. And it's important to acknowledge that consumer behavior has changed over the last several years. And again, as I was talking to my CEO friend, I said, you may not realize this, but just the way people have searched, the consumer behavior that has changed since 2011 has changed primarily as a result of the shift to internet traffic being on mobile devices, which gives you the opportunity to have a geolocation component to your search. And so Google search interest and near me searches has increased 3,400% since 2011. And this is also true in healthcare related searches, whether it be urgent cares or doctor near me or OBGYN near me. Those kinds of things play in. But what they find and how the Google looks at that information is a complex equation. Google and other search engines and map map directories and so forth look at hundreds of online sources to deliver accurate location data to try to triangulate on what is accurate data. And to try to do this manually and fix all of this is basically an impossible task because it's always moving. So one of the places I said you need to invest in is looking at online listings management and syndication technology, which now makes it possible to automate and clean up and handle the ongoing maintenance of this information. This capability is out there. It's easy. Invest in it. Get all of your local listings and map locations dialed in so they deliver an accurate experience, because the last thing you want a patient to do is try to go to the office or try to go to a doctor's location and have the wrong address, wrong phone number. Again, those are the kinds of things that create uncertainty, and it goes into that category of not handling the little things right. So this shouldn't even be a question. Number 3, I told him about Facebook. I said, there's an amazing amount of not only attention here, but also targeting in terms of being able to very specifically position your message in front of a certain demographic of people. And initially the response was, well, Facebook is, it's mostly younger people on there, and our the people we really want to reach are a bit older. But I said, well, that's changed, and this is even a study from 2014 talking about teens leaving Facebook and being replaced by users 55 and older. What actually happened here is the story of my dad, who famously in our family said, I will never go on that Bookface thing. And I said, it's a waste of time. I'm never going on Bookface. And I said, okay, great. Fast forward 2.5 years where my father then had an explosion of 6 grandchildren in 2.5 years. And now my dad, who is 70, is on Facebook every single day. So what that means is that there's opportunity to place messaging and advertisements and create awareness with populations that have a high probability of needing your services, and there's tremendous amount of scale and leverage available there. The other thing I talked to him about was search marketing. So casting a wider net. It's one thing to have your web presence in place, but there's no guarantee that people are going to find it. And the real estate on Google is coming more and more at a premium, whether we like it or not. If you're not participating in using search marketing to cast a wider net for your services, you are missing opportunities. And to break it down really simply for him, I said, look, the benefit of search marketing is it allows you to provide information to someone that is raising their hand and saying, I need help with this, and be able to give them that information right now. The other part was being able to give them information that is directly related to what they're looking for, and do it in a targeted way to people that are nearby or in markets or locations that are highly likely to be able to benefit from your services. And again, if you're not using this or you don't have a strategy around this, there's huge missed opportunity. But the other part of this is looking at how you deploy these strategies, because if they aren't done right, there's it's a good way to lose a lot of money or waste a lot of money. So it's important to have the right people, the right processes, the right team members in place to be able to leverage this in an efficient way and actively build more efficiency into your campaigns over time. The other thing I talked to him about was video, and certainly online video is becoming more and more of the new TV. Some statistics from a recent survey that Google did, that 52% of patients and caregivers watch videos prior to engaging services, and 70% of patients and caregivers consider video sites the most influential sources of data prior to treatment. And this makes sense. It's because video is a very powerful medium in terms of helping people rapidly capture information. When I go back to the story of my daughter's club feet, it was a video of seeing a child that had club feet, and then 2 seconds later seeing that same child running around, which served to reduce my uncertainty and feel more calm in that moment. And so there's huge opportunity to become a creator of more and more content. There's certainly amazing stories that exist within all of your organizations. Your physicians are doing amazing things. You have amazing technology. There is tremendous success and benefit that many of your patients have experienced. And it's important to, in many cases, hopefully use some of these approaches to free up the time of your marketing team to become more and more brand journalists, as opposed to having to be in the weeds about all this stuff every time, but actually go out and get the stories, because that's the hard thing. And that to do is to go out and actually get these stories and turn them into a medium that you can publicize. But it's important to understand that not only is it important to publish the information on platforms like YouTube, but also look at YouTube as a advertising platform as well. It's very easy to very specifically target messaging and content based on the search behavior of folks on YouTube, YouTube being the world's second largest search engine. Tons of traffic there, and there's opportunity to get in front of those people, again, in the right place, right time, right context. And the final tactic I told him that we're seeing a lot of success in is direct-to-recruit marketing. I said, certainly many of our clients are saying that recruitment is one of the biggest challenges that even marketing is getting asked to help with these days. HR is coming to marketing and saying, hey guys, can you help us? The job fairs are not getting it done. And the recruiters are killing us in terms of the fees that we have to pay to acquire new medical professionals. We need to diversify our portfolio and open up a channel of going direct to recruit. And certainly there's opportunity to do this digitally. And many of our clients have seen immediate return on investment in terms of savings on recruitment fees. I had a client recently that placed 2 ER nurses in about 6 weeks. They told us it was about a $40,000 savings. So there's huge opportunity there to add an additional channel that you can use to help the HR folks and the recruiting needs of the organization by delivering a strategy online to get in front of those folks that are looking for your service, looking for opportunities, but just may never find you. So the organizations that get out there and get in front of this have opportunity, and the truth is not many are doing it very well. But those that seek to use digital strategies to support their recruitment have honestly huge upside right now. So in conclusion, I just want to end with a quote here that from some of my friends at RMH Associates, and a quote from their book, Breaking Out of the Healthcare Abyss. It said, leaders must nurture their dissatisfaction with the status quo by constantly re-examining current reality and living in a perpetual state of inquiry. Strategic questions, not operational ones, are the ones that must be answered before a transformational process can begin. And I just bring this up to say that 2017 and the strategies that are required now to capture a competitive advantage require more than anything a different mindset. A different mindset in terms of where you invest, the types of investments you make, the types of partners you choose, and understanding that just buying all the technology is not necessarily going to deliver results. I had a colleague of mine say that they had, a colleague of mine as an executive at a hospital said they had bought every piece of technology and bought every bright and shiny object in terms of platforms and digital technology and things like that, but they had nobody to extract any value from them. So that's where, again, it's almost like buying the Fitbit and hoping that it will get you in shape. The first things first is the outcome has to be the first thing. Strategic outcomes have to be what the focus is, and then look at whether the current mindset is going to support the current strategic needs before you even get into operational requirements. So to sum up, number one, get nimble. Being nimble in 2017 as a healthcare system and organization is a competitive advantage. If you can move faster than your competitors and you can get your message to market quicker, you will gain incremental patients, you'll gain incremental revenue, incremental market share. Number two, go where the attention is. Invest where people are looking and look at your current investments and see if they still make sense. Because there's a good chance there's portions of that in those investments that may be legacy and it may make sense to redirect. Number three, move fast. You can't afford to let things take years to roll out. 24-month project plans, 12-month project plans are too slow because the longer the project plan, the longer it takes to roll out, the more risk is involved, both in terms of execution and in terms of the fact things will have changed by the time you launch. Number four, don't build it, lease it. There's no benefit in owning a lot of this technology. It's more valuable to get the result, just buy the result. And then finally, look at investing in managed services as opposed to feeling like you have to build everything yourself. It's more important for marketing and technology teams at hospitals to look at where they can make an impact on the organization as opposed to become creators of technology platforms that in many cases don't stand the test of time and have high value, high cost of ownership. And finally, challenge the status quo. Continuing to maintain many of these things is not necessarily going to serve the organization, and there's opportunity for those organizations and executives that are willing to ask the questions and challenge the status quo and have a constant state of inquiry around why things are being done the way they are that are going to deliver an advantage to the organization. So with that, in the few minutes we've got left, I wanted to open it up to some questions and see if there's anything else we can talk about here that might benefit the audience. Morgan?
Thank you, Brian, for that fantastic presentation. We will now begin today's question and answer session. Please submit any questions you have by typing them into your control panel in the space labeled Enter a Question for Staff and clicking Send. We will try to get through as many questions as we have time for. And there's a lot of questions coming in from the audience. And Brian, one audience member wants to know, as a CEO, what should I expect from my teams to deliver in terms of digital strategy in 2017?
That's a great question. I think it starts with, before you do anything, actually looking at the go forward needs of the organization today. A lot of times, if you look at the web presence of a hospital, specifically the website, a lot of times that becomes a diary of where they have been and does not necessarily serve where you want to go. And so number one should be a marketing organization that is actively interviewing senior executives within the organization and is asking and hopefully earning their way to a place at the table, because there's absolute truth in that they can deliver a competitive advantage to the organization. So I think in terms of things that a CEO should expect inquisitive marketing teams that are not just happy to sit back and do what they've always done, but are actually interviewing leaders within the organization to find out where marketing might make a strategic impact to the whole organization as a whole, to a specific service line, to a specific set of doctors, whatever it might be, but that they are aligning their activities with those things and then developing strategies from that. So an outcome-focused approach. And then in terms of the delivery of those strategies, what a CEO should expect today is they should expect a high level of accountability on the investments that are made and what did we get back for them. Some of the leading organizations that we work with have done an amazing job of not just being able to account to their C-level team of what has the marketing organization delivered for the investment that has been made, but then actually be able to show how efficiency has increased over time. So in one example, we have a client that in their presentation, they said, hey, we've increased our lead volume and our internet traffic for these key service lines and our conversions into patients by X amount over the last year. But then the really, kind of the next level part of that was, oh yeah, and by the way, we've also been able to do this by increasing the efficiency of our campaigns over time and actually reducing the amount that we have to spend to achieve the same objective. And that's the kind of thing that I believe that CEOs and C-level folks should be expecting today. And if you've got a team that's looking at things that way, you can be guaranteed for an advantage in your marketplace.
Great, Brian. Thank you for breaking that question down. Another audience member is wondering, are there any types of organizations that are moving faster than others?
That's a great question again. I would say that what we see is that in many cases, the independent hospitals that are out there and independent hospitals and some regional systems are able to move faster simply because perhaps they have just less bureaucracy. But they're also seeing that ability to be more nimble as an advantage. And so not only in terms of specialization of their portfolios and their services that they're bringing to the market, but also their approach to marketing those services within that market. In many cases, moving faster and outflanking larger competitors, which is pretty interesting to see. So I think that those organizations also that have marketing with a place at the table in the C-suite and have moved it beyond communications or just PR, but have actually moved it into strategic and tactical marketing activities that are aligned with the organization. Those organizations are moving faster as well because they're attaching those investments to strategic objectives of the organization.
That's a great point. Thank you for clarifying that. And one audience member wants to know about challenges in regards to digital marketing. Where do you see the biggest failures?
Biggest failures. I would say that probably falls into two buckets. One is in terms of the development of digital and web presence platforms. We see, I would consider projects that take years to roll out failures, because there's huge opportunity cost in not being to market quickly in terms of delivering the type of experience that you're trying to deliver to the marketplace. If your project takes that long, there's a good chance you've spent more than you needed to, and there's a good chance that you're ultimately not going to deliver on the outcome that you were shooting for. And then finally, by the time you finally roll it out, there's a good chance a lot of it's out of date. So I consider, things need to move much, much quicker. And so that requires different business models, and it requires different mindsets. So I'd say, that is an area where the old mindset says that web presence and websites for hospital systems need to take years. You need to have lots of different, they have to be these big complex projects that take, lots and lots of analysis and things like this that honestly, to try to get it perfect, as opposed to looking at it as something you can move fast on and iterate very quickly. And that ability to iterate quickly is something that most organizations haven't experienced in the past, and that's why the mindset is still what it is. In terms of digital marketing, it is often where marketing is executed with no consideration to where those patients go. So we broadcast online, we attract patients, we deliver a good experience, but then nobody picks up the phone, or it hasn't been aligned with the operational ability of the organization to execute. Where the people come through and they say, yes, I want to do business with you, I'm interested in your services, and the answer is, well, I have no availability for 4 months. So that to me that's like advertising for the competition. So I'd say those are two big areas where there's where we see things not delivering in an ideal way.
Great, thank you for pointing that out, Brian. We have another audience member who would like to know, how would you tie CRM software with digital marketing?
A great question. So in CRM, that is definitely an area where there needs to be a consideration of it for investment. I've seen two approaches to that. You definitely need the ability to account for what you are driving from an online perspective, and ideally you're capturing that in a database where you can manage the relationship of those individuals over time. Where we've seen that very successful with clients is when they've implemented a CRM, they implement it at a kind of a piece by piece level where they're taking a part of the organization or at a campaign level, and they're capturing information about patients. This could be for, let's say, orthopedics or for maternity or whatever it might be, and really looking at that and knowing that for that part of the organization that those patients may not convert immediately, and it may take some curation or ongoing contact to get them to choose your services. And if it's taken at a kind of at a service line by service line level, that's often achievable with most organizations. The flip side of that is where we've seen CRM implementations potentially try to kind of boil the ocean, do everything at once, and we've not seen a lot of success in those with our clients, where they've it just becomes overwhelming in terms of the attempt to integrate all this data and try to bring it all together in one giant platform. That'll fall into the category of these platforms that take years to roll out and millions of dollars without much return and ability to show success. So that's where we've seen from a CRM perspective, really smart to have that as a way to capture information, but look at it as a crawl, walk, run approach where the organization can actually get that information, show results, and demonstrate that it actually works to your C-suite, and then grow it over time.
Thanks to the audience for that great question, and Brian for that informative response. It looks like we have time for one more question. We have an audience member who would like to know, you mentioned doing PPC advertising that's doctor specific. Is that proven to be more beneficial than just advertising for the overarching organization?
I would say that it's not either or, and specifically with the doctors, the strategy there is really about recapturing that first position of Google for them. It's less about necessarily marketing their specific service line. You would probably want to do that with as I alluded to, a more overarching approach at the service line level. Specifically, when we're talking about a doctor's name, the strategy there is to simply recapture that first position of Google, which today might be going to a third-party directory. It might be going to if you search that doctor's name, it might maybe go into some other website that does not belong to your hospital. And this is an easy way to recapture that traffic, because people are looking for your doctors, and it may be existing patients and things like that. But what we want is for all those patients to come back to your hospital, your web presence, as opposed to third-party platforms. And so that's just a real easy way to do that. But in terms of the service line level, you would want a more strategic overarching campaign, and that would be more around symptoms or services as opposed to the doctor's name.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much, Brian. Do you have any closing remarks for our audience today?
I would only say that just to remember that in 2017, it really is about a mindset, and taking a step back and looking at whether the mindset and the approaches, the business models, the partners, the way things always have been done really will get you where you want to go. Because the truth is that in many cases they're not delivering the results that healthcare organizations or the C-suite really deserves, frankly. But many times they're just not asking enough questions, and they're too afraid to try new business models that may be different than in the past. I mean, that is one of the things with healthcare, is that healthcare organizations are not necessarily known for trying lots of new things all the time. And honestly, where we are today, at least in the world of digital marketing and the digital strategy, the different mindsets, different business models, and different approaches and different partners are going to be required to help folks get there. And Morgan, just as a parting gesture, one thing I'd say, just for anybody on the phone, this book, I would highly recommend this book, Breaking Out of the Healthcare Abyss, a great strategic book about where we are today and what is going to be required in the mindsets of healthcare executives, not just marketing, but healthcare executives in general, to really not only differentiate themselves, but also be able to be a delivering advantage to their organizations. And so we'd like to make an offer of a free copy of this book to anybody that goes to our website, SwerveHealthcare.com. Just enter the word breakout in the contact form, and we'll send a free copy of this book to the first 50 entries. As just a thank you for attending today's webinar.
Fantastic.
In terms
Thank you. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, and in terms of my contact information, it's right here on the screen. But thank you, Morgan, for running the show today.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thank you so much. That is all we have time for today. I want to thank Brian for his excellent presentation and to our audience for participating today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to having you join us for future webinars.